The first time I heard the chains dragging across the tile, I thought someone was playing a cruel joke. But the laughter that followed, it didn't belong to anyone who worked upstairs. It sounded hollow. Like it had been echoing for years. I'm not supposed to talk about this. None of us are. The contract says we clean, prep, and never ask about the basement. But when you hear someone calling your name from behind a locked door, eventually, curiosity wins. I work in a funeral home. And something lives below it. I was 23 when I got the job. Not exactly a dream position, but it paid well and didn't require much socializing. Everhart Sons mortuary, just outside town, tucked between a dying forest and a cemetery that never seemed to shrink. The place looked normal enough. Clean white siding. One front porch swing. A bell on the door that jingled every time you walked in, like it was happy to see you. It wasn't. Ms. Geraldine, the manager, greeted me without a smile. Gray bun. Pale lips. Her handshake felt like dry paper. 3 rules, she said. Never bring food into the prep room. Don't stay past 11 p.m. And never try to open the basement door. I laughed. She didn't. I thought it was some old superstition or weird company policy. I signed the NDA anyway. It didn't take long to realize something was wrong. The other workers avoided the south hallway like it was radioactive. Everyone spoke in whispers when near it, like loud voices might wake something. I asked Tom, the embalmer, about the basement once while we were prepping a body. He stopped mid-incision and stared at me. You don't ask about it. You just don't. Later that week, one of the night staff, Manny, quit on the spot. Left his badge, tools, even his wallet. I found his locker wide open. Inside was a note written in shaky handwriting. The chains moved again. They're getting louder. I saw someone standing at the bottom of the stairs. They looked like me. Then came the voice. I was alone one night, finishing up paperwork. The others had gone home early. The funeral home was silent except for the hum of the freezer units. That's when I heard it. A whisper, just barely audible, coming from the vent above the prep room sink. Eli. My name. It was soft. Breathless. I spun around. Nothing. I climbed onto the counter and pressed my ear to the vent. For a moment, nothing. Then, chains. Dragging slowly. Followed by a faint sob. It didn't sound angry. It sounded tired. The next day, I couldn't help myself. I went to the south hallway. The basement door was older than the rest, thick, painted over dozens of times. 3 padlocks. Fresh scratch marks. Long ones, like nails clawing outward. The floor tiles in front of it were chipped, cracked, and discolored. Something had been dragged across them. Something heavy. Repeatedly. That night, I had a dream. I was standing at the door. It swung open, revealing a long staircase with flickering lights. And at the bottom, me. Smiling. A week later, I noticed something impossible. The basement door had shifted. I know that sounds insane, but I measured it. The scuff marks on the floor had moved half an inch to the left. As if the entire doorway had slid sideways. And no one had been near it. The scratch marks were deeper too. Fresh. There were 4 now. Always 4. That night, while cleaning the prep room, I saw a shadow under the door. No light in the hall, no movement. Just, a shadow. Standing still. And then the smell came. Not rot, not decay. Candle wax. And burned hair. One afternoon, I helped Tom file records. There were stacks of old obituaries, death certificates, cremation orders. That's when I found her. Clara Ward. Age 16. Cause of death, drowning. But I remembered her. She used to ride my bus. She was never declared dead. She vanished 2 years ago. Police said it was a runaway case. But here she was, processed, buried. By Everhart Sons. I confronted Ms. Geraldine. Her face went white. Some people don't die when the world says they do, she whispered. Sometimes, we bury them anyway. I set up a recorder under the vent near the basement door. I left it running overnight. The next morning, I played it back. For 6 hours, nothing. Then, click. A low metallic rattle, like thick chains being dragged slowly. Then, a woman's voice, ragged and wet-sounding. Let me go back. Let me remember. I turned it up. Behind her voice was a quiet loop of chanting. A low Latin phrase.
Let's go.
I looked it up later.
Let's go.
It means, what is buried may not be forgotten. What is forgotten must remain buried. The blueprint didn't match the layout. There was an empty wall where another room was supposed to be, according to an old floor plan from 1972. I tapped the wall. Hollow. I waited until Geraldine left. Then I pried the wood away. Behind it was a small embalming room. Unused. Dust thick as snow. And in the center of the room, 4 nailed-shut coffins. They weren't labeled with names. Just numbers. And Roman numerals. One of them was cracked. From the inside. 2 days later, Tom didn't show up for work. We assumed he'd quit, until he walked in the next morning, calm and clean, as if nothing happened. But something was off. He didn't speak unless spoken to. He didn't blink. And he always paused when passing the basement door, as if listening to something behind it. When I asked him where he'd been, he just smiled. Some of us don't get to leave the first time. Later, I watched footage from the mortuary camera. Tom never came in through the front door. He walked out of the basement. I finally confronted Geraldine again. I told her what I saw, Tom's return, Clara's obituary, the coffins. She didn't deny any of it. This place isn't a funeral home, she said. It's a barrier. The dead, some of them don't stay dead. Not because they're evil. But because they remember too much. This place buries them twice, first in the ground, and again in memory. The basement isn't for storage. It's a seal. A seal that's breaking. If the chains ever stop, she whispered, it means they've started climbing. It happened on a Wednesday. The night shift was mine. Just me. Just silence. At 11:43 p.m., I heard the sound again, chains dragging across the tile. But this time, I wasn't the only one. The mortuary cat, Vincent, hissed and ran. Lights flickered. And I swear the air temperature dropped 10 degrees in an instant. Then came the click. The padlocks. All 3. They unlatched by themselves, one after another. Metal clanked to the floor. I didn't open the door. I didn't have to. It opened for me. I stepped in. The stairs were concrete, damp, lined with rusted pipes. The further I went, the more time seemed to slow. My phone's flashlight flickered and pulsed like a dying heart. On the 14th step, I passed a photo on the wall. It was a picture of me, taken from behind, dated tomorrow's date. More steps. More photos. Other people. Pale, eyes hollow. Some with mouths sewn shut. A faint lullaby echoed up from below, distorted, as if sung underwater. I recognized the tune. It was the same one my sister used to hum, before she died. The bottom of the stairs opened into a massive chamber, impossible in size. It couldn't fit beneath the building. In the center, A circle of chairs. Empty. All facing each other. Chains ran across the floor, feeding into the walls. In each chair sat a corpse. Or something close to one. One of them turned its head toward me. "Do you remember us yet?" it rasped. My legs locked. I couldn't speak. Couldn't blink. Another leaned forward. "That's why you were brought here. You're the last one who can forget." Then they all began to hum. In the far wall, a mirror hung. But it wasn't my reflection that stared back. It was me, yes, but wrong. The eyes were too wide. The mouth too still. It didn't blink when I blinked. Then it moved, before I did. Behind the mirror version of me were others. Dozens. All identical, standing in rows, unmoving. One by one, they raised their hands and pointed, at me. The glass cracked. A hand reached through. And I ran. I sprinted back toward the stairs. But they were gone. Only a wall. Then, Tom appeared, standing in the dark. Not quite breathing. Not quite blinking. "You should have stayed upstairs," he said. "They remember you now. You opened the chain with thought alone." He touched the wall, and the staircase bled into view, oozing from the concrete like a wound. "You can leave," he added, "but not all of you will make it back." I asked him what that meant. He said, "You'll see." And then he smiled. And vanished. I climbed the staircase, faster than I ever thought possible. The voices rose. The chains screamed. The mirror people howled. Something tried to pull me backward, but I kept going. When I reached the top, I slammed the door shut behind me. Silence. But the light was wrong. The mortuary looked older. Dustier. My reflection in the window blinked before I did again. And worst of all, my phone was still in my pocket. I pulled it out. The wallpaper was different. It showed me, staring down into the basement. After I came back upstairs, everything was wrong. The clocks all read different times. Pictures on the walls had changed. Ms. Geraldine's office was empty, desk untouched, dust an inch thick. And worst of all, the bodies were gone. Every one of them. No coffins. No slabs. Just polished floors and silence. I looked into the mirror in the prep room. My reflection was still delayed. Still watching. Then it smiled, while I didn't. The sound woke me at 3:12 a.m. It wasn't dragging anymore. It was snapping. The chains beneath the floor gave way, one after another, like dry bones fracturing. Each snap echoed through the vents. Then came the voices. Thousands of them. Whispering names. Screaming hymns in reverse. Some were laughing. Some were just breathing. I turned on the hallway light. Blood had begun to seep from beneath the basement door. Not fresh, old. Thick. Dark. And it moved like it was alive. The whispering grew louder. Every room now echoed with a name. Mine. Over and over, Eli. 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 The mirror people no longer stayed behind the glass. I saw one in the break room, watching from a corner where no door led. Another in the embalming lab, hands twitching, copying movements I hadn't made yet. I realized they weren't reflections at all. They were possibilities, versions of us that died forgotten and clawed their way back. And they needed someone to remember them to exist. That someone was me. The building began to shift. Rooms changed location. The break room became a hallway. The prep room stretched long and narrow like a tunnel. The exits no longer led outside, they looped back into the same room. I opened the front door and found rows of coffins lined along the lawn. Each one was open. Each one was empty. Except one. Mine. Inside was my name. My clothes. My phone. But no body. I found Tom's journal. Half of it was blank. The other half, burned into the pages. We don't embalm the dead. We freeze them. Keep them quiet. The chains were never to bind the basement. They were to keep out the ones on the other side of memory. When the last name is forgotten, the mirror breaks. And they walk. At the bottom of the page. You're the last one who remembers, Eli. That means they'll all come through you. Then the lights went out. And I heard the mirror crack. I returned to the basement. There were no chains now. Only a gaping, breathing black void where the stairs once were. I stepped inside. Gravity didn't feel real. Time folded. I saw images from my past, moments I had forgotten, faces I hadn't seen since childhood. Some of them were smiling too wide. Some were mouthing words I didn't recognize. And in the center of the chamber stood a mirror. Cracked. Covered in hands, from the inside. They pressed out. One by one. Until one hand broke through, and gripped me. I woke up in my apartment. Or, it looked like my apartment. Until I saw the mirror. My reflection was missing. Just the room behind me. On the table was a letter. This is not where you live. This is where you're remembered. Don't look into the mirror again. But I did. And I saw myself, sitting alone, in the basement. Still. Eyes wide. Hands folded. Like I'd never left. Because maybe I didn't. I work in a funeral home. But I don't remember what it's like to live anymore. And now, the chains are gone. So if you hear your name whispered at night, don't answer. Because it might be me. Or worse. The version of me that got out.